everybody, welcome to Illuminated Productions. It's October and that means it's time to jump into some horror reviews. This was definitely the hardest decade, even just finding a contending list. I had to watch a handful of new movies just to come up with something authentic. I mean, what the hell was happening? This decade, similar to the 80s, you'll find a lot of horror comedies, and those don't always provide the best scares. Okay, so let's get to it. Here are the top 10 horror films from the 1990s. Pi. Darren Aronofsky, Requiem for a Dream, Black Swan, helmed this black and white debut about a mathematician on the brink of breaking an important code. Most of the film's gleeful menace comes from the underlying social anxiety themes clouding the ultra-intelligent protagonist. With an acute sense of paranoia and pessimism, this nail-biter was an indie hit that put Aronofsky on the map. He was able to do everything with a budget of a little over $130,000, turning a profit of around $3 million. Complete with vivid hallucinations, schizophrenic insinuations, and a sound design plagued with voices, this is a gem of a film to be endured. Who else is kind of happy that the film is only 84 minutes? 7. You'll actually find 7 on a lot of top horror lists from the 90s, and no, this isn't really a horror film. But the decade was pretty dry when it comes to true genre flicks. 7 is more like a psychological thriller, mystery suspense, neo-noir drama with an edgy soundtrack from Howard Shore. David Fincher, Fight Club Gone Girl directs, starring Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt, who have some admirable chemistry as the veteran and rookie detectives. Gwyneth Paltrow co-stars as Pitt's wife, who almost immediately has an energy around her that suggests a sense of dreary foreboding. The detectives track down a serial killer who uses the 7 deadly sins as a guideline for his killings, played infamously by Kevin Spacey. It's in the murder involving sloth where I find the majority of the film's horror. If you've seen this movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That scene alone I found deeply disturbing and paralyzing, earning its viable slot. Cape Fear. A remake of the 1960s film with Gregory Peck and Robert Mitchum, this Martin Scorsese-directed thriller stars Robert De Niro as the ex-con rapist and Nick Nolte as his lawyer, who withheld certain evidence upon trial which could have led him to an easier sentence. De Niro is a hardcore creeper, stopping at nothing to ruin the life of Nolte's character, who's a father and husband to Juliette Lewis and Jessica Lange, who all bring tremendous range and colors to the film. There's a lot of intrigue and pull into the story and tone, but is somewhat distracted by its questionable camera work, including some quick zooms and awkward point-of-view shots. Just didn't feel necessary to me. Definitely shows some true 90s colors, but this is still a really engrossing movie and has a wide audience in mind, and I appreciate that. De Niro and Lewis were nominated that year by the Academy, and that makes a lot of sense. The cast is great, but these two stick out and are amazing in the few scenes involving just the two of them. Although I still question the extremely dramatic extent De Niro goes to cause suffering upon Nolte and co. It definitely does a good job at justifying its means to an end for the most part. Just don't be totally surprised if you come across some bombastic moments. Funny Games. Remember when there was a series of house break-in movies from the thousands, including Panic Room, When a Stranger Calls, and The Strangers? Funny Games from '97 paved the way for those films to enter the mainstream reboot, for better or worse. Why are you doing this? Asks the suffering victim. Because you were home, answers the intruder. It's all a silly, lighthearted, life-stopping game. Whoever survives the night wins. Brought upon with haunting casual undertones mixed with bipolar ultra-violence, this game changer certainly justified an American remake, and although it's like a shot-for-shot remake, is also worth checking out if you're trying to avoid subtitles at all costs. The film echoes a kind of sinister villainism harkening back to A Clockwork Orange, and we can always appreciate that. Dolores Claiborne. A most effective Stephen King adaptation tracking a long history of domestic violence, murder, and secrets, Kathy Bates leads the cast as the sympathetic and strong title character, mother to Jennifer Jason Leigh, in a somewhat more angst-driven role. The film is set in a typical King setting of Maine, and it's more cemented in the psychological thriller and drama section, but I find the emotional suffering chilling and entirely effective in creating a realistic monster in the form of domestic abuse. The film feels a bit kitschy at times, but there are some gripping scenes here and some disturbing suspense brought to life by the cast and director Taylor Hackford, who later made The Devil's Advocate and Ray. This is a movie that finds every person doing their job with fine execution, including composer Danny Elfman and cinematographer Gabrielle Berenstain in a career highlight. A scholar noted the film for being, quote, one of the only true feminist movies, but that was stated back in 2008, and I think we have certainly made some long leaps since then. Roger Ebert praised the film for its, quote, everyday horrors such as alcoholism, wife beating, and child abuse, and the sin of pride. I was happy to have remembered this movie and to include it on our list here. This is a great 90s film that holds up really well in its ability to emotionally frighten us, and I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it.
It was beautiful.
The Silence of the Lambs. Another pick not necessarily cemented in horror history, but more so psychological thriller history. This pick made it here due to its ability to disturb us early on and keep a steady line of fear and edge-of-your-seat suspense throughout the duration. Not to mention the classic ending in Night Vision from the point of view of our villain. This is horrific stuff, led by an utterly engaging performance from Jodie Foster, who fought hard to get this role. She plays a detective seeking aid on a case from the iconic Hannibal the Cannibal Lecter, played notoriously by Anthony Hopkins, who took on the skin of a snake to enter the intelligent, frightening shoes of the life-sentenced criminal. This was adapted from the 1988 novel and became the 5th highest-grossing movie of 1991, winning Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Director, and Best Adapted Screenplay. Damn. Here we find some more music appropriated by Howard Shore. Ted Levine co-stars as the haunted, skin-wearing Buffalo Bill, which sparks some eyebrow-raising here as the bisexual transgender megavillain. Director Jonathan Demme admitted later that he, quote, came to realize there is a tremendous absence of positive gay characters in movies. One women rights activist called it, quote, outrageous and offensive for having won so many Oscars in material that involves the skinning of women. She's not wrong, but despite its faults, The Silence of the Lambs is still shocking and as horrific as ever, not just in its nature, but also in its execution. Audition. Oh boy, deep breaths now. I discovered Audition on a countdown of scariest horror movie moments from Bravo back in the 2000s. The scene they showed scared the hell out of me, and I immediately sought out this Japanese horror flick. The film has been called audacious, disturbing, and unwatchable. Those with lighter stomachs, please proceed with caution. Highly dramatic and psychologically tactful, this gruesome movie depicts the effects of child abuse turned entirely upside down and some genuinely disgusting scenes of controversial revenge that will linger long in your brain. One critic compared it to Salo, which is not necessarily a good thing when it comes to watchable horror films. Others compared it to The Devil's Rejects and Saw, which are vastly more watchable than Salo in my opinion. But regardless of which end of the violent spectrum this falls on, it's a stunning tale and a cinematic gem. Again, take caution. Jacob's Ladder. From Fatal Attraction director Adrian Lin comes a deeply psychological film about a veteran from Vietnam, played by Tim Robbins' The Shawshank Redemption. This is another pick that teeters more towards dark drama, but come on, you need that emotional leverage to make the horror really get us good. Full of terrifying and evocative visions from our tortured hero, the followability is a tad muddy, and the film plays more like an in-depth character study of a wrecked man than anything else. It's been criticized for demanding multiple viewings and at the same time being an entirely depressing experience, in which an analysis of the content becomes arguably dismissible, which is not entirely wrong. It's a downer, but regardless of its shortcomings, horror films are not really meant to be feel-good experiences anyways. So really, I admire the movie for going there and demanding our experience to be one like the characters, one of long suffering and endurance. Jacob's Ladder sticks with you as any great horror movie should if you can manage to sustain its somewhat bleak overhaul. The Blair Witch Project. Oh god, that scene at the end just sets it all for me. This OG of found footage movies was muscled with a micro budget and had a wildly successful box office break. The film caused some vomiting and motion sickness towards the end of the movie due to its rapid handycam work. This sleeper hit went on to inspire video games, sequels, parodies, and a long line of found footage movies in the years to come. You have to admire the effect of this movie, especially from something coming out of the woodwork. It's a pretty simple plot that you probably already know about a small documentary crew that enlists on a camping trip to explore the legend of the fictional Blair Witch. Based on a 35-page script, much of the movie was improvised and put together on the spot or in the editing room. Again, you have to commend ambitious projects like this, especially ones that are able to shut down big-budget competition. The film was officially budgeted at a total of $60,000, earning just under $250 million. With a game-changing marketing campaign involving missing pictures of the cast, the film was highly debated at the time with whether the events that happened were real or not, which in retrospect is just funny. We were so naive. 1999. A simpler time. I find the horror in its ability to impose a crucial nonfiction vibe throughout the duration, and also to make us afraid by showing us very, very little. Here's another classic and uncompromising ending that you have to just see for yourself. Misery. Ah, yes. Misery is a Stephen King adapted film by Stand By Me's Rob Reiner. Another wildly successful collaboration, this pseudo-personal story focuses on a writer who ends up in a car accident and a mega fan that comes to his alleged rescue. Kathy Bates stars as Annie, who adores Paul Sheldon's Misery books. I can't say enough good things about her character and her performance of Annie Wilkes, the non-swearing, snorting villain who does a plentiful job at keeping us afraid. When Annie learns that Paul is planning on killing Misery in his latest work to be published, she burns the master copy in a horrifying downhill slide, comes down on the author from the tremendously disturbing Kathy Bates in an Oscar-winning performance. The film was also a box office success with a 1:4 budget and earnings ratio. This haunting movie received rave reviews due to its performances and its ability to deliver some outstanding suspense. This is an impressive film made with a fairly makeable premise under a modest budget. I admire how one film can have such few characters and keep us constantly engaged, especially in the 90s. It takes a lot of skill, especially because it holds up so well as any modern horror movie does. If you have not seen this film, put it at the top of your horror list. So I have to say some of the far better films here came from the earlier portion of the 90s, which is kind of just like an overflow of the 80s. Needless to say, things did pick up a bit in 99 with Blair Witch, even though even that remains somewhat critically mixed. I hope you enjoyed our picks. Stay tuned for 2000's Top Horror coming next week. We're excited to keep churning these videos out regardless of my many bad dreams. Subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this video. What are your top picks from this decade? Did we miss any? Till next time.